Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today I'm going to talk about the Doctor Who animations, and I'm going to talk about why I am in for the Doctor Who animations, for the most part, thus far. Now this is kind of a response video to a fellow WhoTuber that I get on with really well, Cody W1. He did a really good video talking about why he was out of the Doctor Who animations, why he had kind of been put off by them, and then how he didn't like the direction they were going. It's a great video. I definitely recommend checking it out. I'll leave a link to it either up here or down in the description, somewhere where you can find it. So I kind of wanted to give my thoughts on that as well. Him and I do very much enjoy each other's channels, and I like the idea of us kind of bouncing off each other with ideas and content. I like doing that with other YouTubers. I have mostly been in for the animations. One of the main reasons is it's the first time I've experienced a lot of these stories. I'm not the biggest fan of telesnap recons. I don't really like just CD soundtracks. My second alternative is probably the novels. I tend to like novelizations because I'm really good at picturing the stories in my mind, what one of my patrons, the Flyattractor, calls the movie in my mind. And I can just read it at my own pace. I tend to love the novelization of the Space Pirates, for example, whereas the photo recon of it drags very badly and gets progressively harder to watch. Now, one of the advantages to the animations is I'm at least getting half of the original work with the audio existing. When I'm reading, I'm not getting the existing audio. I'm making it up, of course, in my mind. This way, I get a visual representation that's more than just a telesnap. Some of the telesnaps are fine. Some of the telesnaps recons are fine. Some of them are considerably harder to get through. The Mythmakers was very difficult to get through, even though I enjoyed it for the most part. So having these animations has really let me experience more of the first and second Doctor's eras that I would have been more hesitant to experience otherwise. And I found them very enjoyable. For the most part, I like how the early stories, keeping in mind that the early stories they animated were pretty much, I think they had a rule of 2 episodes or less. Every single serial they did back then had to only have 2 episodes or less missing. They had to be at least half intact, or in most cases, mostly intact. We see this with the Reign of Terror, with 4 out of 6 episodes existing. The 10th Planet, 3 out of 4 episodes existing. The Ice Warriors, 4 out of 6 episodes existing. The Moon-based, 2 out of 4 episodes existing. With those early stories. And since they were having to match mostly intact stories, of course the animations fit in better with the surviving footage, because it would be very jarring if they didn't. And it makes sense for them to do that. I tend to like that. One thing I disagree with Cody Wiz is he thought the animation for Ice Warriors didn't match the surviving footage well enough. I disagree, because they did actually look at the telesnap photos for that story, and some of the animated shots match those telesnap photos perfectly. I can't remember if it's on the making of for Ice Warriors or if it's something somebody did on YouTube. They compare the animation with the recon photos, and they really tried hard to make it match up, in my opinion. Of all the animations, it's probably the one that tries to be the most faithful to the original episodes. But Moonbase pulls it off really well. The 10th Planet, although the camera angles are a bit jarring in the 10th Planet. Same thing with the Reign of Terror. There's definitely some limited stuff going on there. The Invasion does it really well. I still think the Invasion animation is one of the best. It slots in really well with the surviving footage. Now, what we have, there's really 2 groups of animations. You have the stuff before Power, and then the stuff Power and after, post-Power. Now, more so from Power of the Daleks, well, not even Power of the Daleks. Power of the Daleks, to me, seems like it tries to be faithful, even though it's pretty animated. That's the reason why it's done in black and white, with the special edition only existing in black and white, and I love the Power animation so much. Power is one of my favorite stories. But the stuff post-Power, this is where you start to see it veer more toward creative license coming in. This can be good and bad, and it's a mixed result depending on the story. This is also where you really see the colors starting to come in, where the stories start coming in color. You kind of got that with Power, but it was an afterthought. This is where you really see it being made with color being the primary focus, with the black and white version being secondary. And of course, the stories here, not all of them, Macra doesn't do it, with the black and white versions cropped to 4:3 and the color versions in 16:9. Macra doesn't do that. I think both of it's in 16:9. Now, I tend to not mind this. I mean, I understand the argument of, like with the Faceless Ones, I was sitting there going, why are you animating the whole thing? 2 episodes exist. And of course they do that because they want to appeal to a more modern audience, someone who would be turned off to black and white or would find it jarring changing from live action to animation. I think the big question, and this is something Cody pointed out in his video, rightfully so, is does that mythological audience exist? Are there some people who are going to watch it because they're curious? Yes. Modern Who fans, they'll take a stab at it. Is there a large enough number of those people to call it an audience? Is there an audience for someone that wants to watch a story like Underwater Menace where it half exists already, where it's animated, all 4 episodes in color in 16:9? Is there an audience for that? Is it a mythological audience or does it really exist? I don't know. That's an interesting question because who's going to be buying these animations mostly? You figure it would be classic fans like me and a lot of you who watch this channel. People who like these old stories. You figure that. I could be wrong, but that's what I figure is it's people, the same people who probably buy the collection box sets. Now, I do believe there's some bleed over because there are plenty of Modern Who fans out there, people who started with Modern Who grew up with Modern who have gone back and watched Classic Who. I'm sure some of you who watch this channel, you got your start with Modern Who, and then you went back to Classic Who, and you either like both, or some of you, I've been told, even prefer Classic now having watched it. And there's definitely, you're the same ones probably buying these sets and these animations. The problem is a lot of the people, the Classic fans who buy these sets and these animations aren't liking some of the modern animations. I didn't care from the Web of Fear episode 3 animation. It was awful. I mean, honestly, you sometimes wonder, was that just a cash grab? Was that just a cash grab? They just threw it together and cash grab. The pessimistic side of me says cash grab. Get me to buy the Steelbook because it only came out on DVD to begin with. This is the chance to put it out on Blu-ray, on Steelbook, on DVD. Some of the fans will buy all of them. The more optimistic side of me says, well, it's just 1 episode missing. Hopefully it's still out there. We'll find it eventually. And it'll give us a chance to do a test run on this 3D animation. And 1, see how it turns out. 2, see what the fandom thinks of it. So the optimistic side of me likes to think that. The Web 3 animation. I've only watched the color version, and I just watched it in isolation. I've never watched the black and white version with the rest of the story because, quite honestly, I like the Web of Fear, but it's overrated. It's good, but it's overrated. It's not one of those stories I just like to go back to a lot. I've only watched it a couple times. I'd rather watch Horns of Nimon or Destiny of the Daleks, honestly. Those are just more entertaining for me. But I like Web of Fear. It's got good atmosphere and good tension, but I never just sat down and watched the newest release all the way through. I need to do that eventually. But I didn't really care for the animation when I watched it in color in isolation, just itself. The Fury from the Deep animation, I also have problems with. I don't care for the more Scooby-Doo look. I don't care for a lot of the creative decisions taking, like enlarging the rooms. It takes away from the claustrophobic, atmospheric nature of the story. I feel like it doesn't achieve the tone the original story was going for, in my opinion. Also, you can tell the animation was rushed with a lot of the guards wearing the face mask so they wouldn't have to do faces. And the way they're standing at that one cliffhanger, the 2 long arms, the South Park running when they throw the couch out the window. It's a mess, honestly. I don't like watching it in color. I don't like watching it in black and white. I'd rather just watch the recon, to be honest. You look at the surviving footage of the episode, what little bit there is, and it just looks so much more tense and so much more atmospheric and so much more scary than the animation gave us. The animation of that scene, you know the scene I mean from episode 2. The animation of it just looks like a parody compared to the actual surviving footage, honestly. But then you have something like Macroterra where the creative decisions work. I love Macroterra. It's now one of my favorite Doctor Who stories, and it's down strictly to the animation. If they had tried to stick to the B-movie giant crab that don't look very convincing way the original was executed, it wouldn't have worked as well. But taking the creative liberty to make the Macra more scary, to make them more fluid in their movement, how their eyes glow out of the shadows. Works really well. I love the black and white color of Macra, and I love the color version of Macra. They hit differently to me. Like, if I watch them, they're different viewing experience, and they're both fantastic. They both have a different feel to them, and I love it. Like, Macroterra is probably the one story that if they found the surviving episodes, I'd be like, eh. I mean, I'd still be happy to have them back, and I'd love to see Troughton's performance, but I have a feeling the original stories wouldn't live up to the animation. I would still be going back to watch the animation at times because it's so well executed. Cody never talked about Macroterra in his video. He kind of skipped from Power of the Daleks to the Faceless Ones, and he talked about how Faceless Ones was kind of where he started losing interest. He didn't like some of the creative decisions, but he didn't talk about the creative decisions in Macra. I'd actually love to hear his review, for him to review the Macroterra animation and get his thoughts on it. I'm really curious what he thinks of the animation as a whole and the creative liberties taken with it. It has a couple nitpicks to it. Because they took so many liberties, we are missing the rough and tumble scene. That's not a big deal for me. And the incidental music, which does have that kind of B-movie American incidental music sound to it, doesn't quite fit what's going on screen at times. But it's not something that bothers me. It's just something I note in the back of my mind, kind of. It's just like, oh, hey. The rest of my mind's like, hey, it's cool. The Faceless Ones, I like that the early parts of the story, because the two existing episodes are episodes 1 and 3, early parts of the story. I like that they are the animated episodes do stick with what's established in the surviving episodes. You know, the rooms look the same. So the animation doesn't feel jarring. It's only toward the end of the animation, toward the last couple parts, where everything gets a little bigger and a little grander because we're at locations like the spaceship and stuff where none of the surviving footage exists. And I don't mind them taking liberties there. That's a really clever way they did that with that one. Evil of the Daleks does it really, really well. I think it does a really good job of matching from what I've seen of the recon work, especially in the Emperor's Throne Room. That looks very much like the original production, at least to me, to my eye. I enjoyed Evil of the Daleks. Galaxy 4, there's a couple of things that don't look right. Steven's face doesn't quite look right. The Doctor's face doesn't quite look right. The Chumleys just aren't as... I wish they'd gone more 3D with the Chumleys like they did the Daleks. I love the Chumleys in the surviving episode 3. The Chumleys are just adorable. I would have liked to have seen maybe the Chumleys done a little better, but I love the orange sky. I love the very 60s Star Trek approach to the animation for that one. And it's a good animation, but it is one you have to watch. If you're going to watch the animated version of Galaxy 4, you have to watch it all animated. Because they did take some creative liberties, like with the Reels encampment. They completely changed that up. And that's featured very predominantly in the surviving episode 3. So if you're going from animation to surviving episode 3 to animation, it's a little jarring. So if I'm watching Galaxy 4, it's animated in color, animated in black and white. Or if I'm watching the surviving footage, I'm watching the recon. They don't blend together very well, in my opinion. I thought Abominable Snowman was fine. I enjoyed the animation well enough. The team that did Fury from the Deep, I think when they're given more time and they're not having to spend so much time just building assets, I do think they do better. The fluidity of movement in Snowmen is much better. And I thought it was really well done. Same thing with Underwater Menace. The fluidity of movement is probably the best it's been since either Evil of the Daleks or the Macroterra. The way people moved seemed a little more natural and less a puppet on strings. I actually enjoy it. The creative liberties do not bother me. Even in Underwater Menace, I thought it would be jarring going from animation to surviving footage. I did not find it so at all. I thought it was fine. I watched, I went from episode 1 animated, surviving 2 and 3, episode 4 animated in black and white, of course, and it is a fine watch. I had no problems with it. The Toy Maker animation, I am willing to let it pass simply because it's the Celestial Toy Maker. It's a very fantasy-themed episode, and that animation style fits the story. Like, I can understand the Doctor entering this realm and being converted to looking the way they do there. My headcanon has no problems with that. So it makes sense that in this fantasy realm where everything operates differently. Physics, all of that they could look like that. That's fine. Now, that animation style, I don't think it would work with any other story. Maybe the Mind Robber if it was missing. But any other story that's actually missing, I would not like it. If they animated the smugglers like that, or the savages, or God bless them, the massacre or master plan, I would not be there for it. I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't purchase it. The only reason I don't mind it is, for me, the animation fits the Celestial toy maker. And, a lot of people make the argument, well, they're changing it too much. They're taking too many creative decisions. It needs to look more like the original production. The people who made the original production didn't want it to look like the original production a lot of times. They were constrained by budget. I have a feeling there was never anyone working on classic Doctor Who went, yeah, I want it to look like that. Well, we're going to give you more money to make it look better. Nah, I don't want more money. I want it to look like that. I want it to look like I was scavenging around in a dumpster for stuff. People seem to forget that. The people who made Classic Who didn't necessarily make it look that way because that's exactly what they wanted. They made it look that way because that's the best they could do with what they had. People don't understand that. I run into the same problem with people who don't like updated effects. I want to see the original effects because that was the original person's design and, their original intent for it. No, that's just the budget they had to work with. Barry Letts was not pleased with Invasion of the Dinosaurs, the dinosaur effects. I guarantee you he wasn't. He's on record for saying he wasn't. He wants Invasion of the Dinosaurs, or he wanted Invasion of the Dinosaurs to have updated effects. He didn't want it to look like that. That's just how it ended up. That's the thing we have to keep in mind with updated effects and the animations taking creative liberties. The people who made the original productions didn't necessarily want them to look the way they do. I guarantee you nobody wanted a Zarby bumping into the camera. But that's the budget. Classic Who was done on a budget. We all know the budget was almost always stretched thin. Look at the CSO work in the caves and Underworld. It's a little rough. That's the only way they could do it because they couldn't actually film in caves or build sets for caves because the money was gone due to inflation. Kind of like now. That's the reason why I don't mind them taking creative liberties with something like, say, Toy Maker, where they're changing up as much as they have done. It's because I'm sure they would have loved to have done more with the original Toy Maker. I'm sure they would have loved to. I guarantee you, if I traveled back in time, somehow with a lot of money, and said, I'm going to triple your budget for this episode, they'd be like, there's some things we can do differently. I guarantee you. So it's not made that way because this is my vision for it. It's made that way because, okay, I'm on a budget. I have to make this work, and this is the best I can do. And that's not to slight the people who made the original show. Some of them got very creative with the money. I mean, there are times it doesn't work, let's be honest, but there are times it works really well. Having a small budget can make you get very creative, and you can make some amazing things. Classic Who was very good at making that work a lot, I think. Mind Robber actually really benefits from that minimalist approach, in my opinion. Whereas if they'd had a bigger budget, we might have got something I didn't like as much. So I don't hold that against it because what we got in the original episodes probably wasn't what they wanted to do. It's just the best they could do with their money. So I don't mind the animations like Macra or Toy Maker taking some creative liberties. Now, I mind it in Fury from the Deep because it completely changes the tone of the story. And the time ran out. I don't like the rooms being bigger because Fury strikes me as a very claustrophobic, scary, tense story. So making everything wider just seems detrimental to that. Also, I don't like the little mask. I don't know why. Just they make me think of Cobra Vipers from like G.I. Joe or something. It just bugs me. So I don't always enjoy every creative decision, but I don't get mad that they make creative decisions because Bondable Snowman is an interesting one because I like some of the decisions they made, and a couple of the others I'm not really keen on. Like, I do love the fact they made the guest cast look more traditionally Oriental, whereas the original production was obviously white people dressed up in makeup because that's just how TV was made back then. I'm glad they didn't carry that look over. And, of course, they made the characters look more properly like they should for where they are in the Himalayas. I don't like the fact they made the characters look so much different, though. Like, one character now having a long beard, another having a scar added, another one having glasses. They made them look so much different that if you are watching it with the surviving episode 2, it's incredibly jarring. And they made the animation without watching the episode 2. I think whoever was in charge of it, I don't remember, was it Gary Russell? I forget. Whoever it was didn't show the animators the existing episode 2. I don't know if that was the right choice. But it does make it to where if you're going to watch the animation, you have to just watch the animation. Watching it with the surviving episode 2 will just leave you confused about who's who. The surviving episode 2 is either best watched in isolation or with the recon. Now, I like how they redesigned the possessed priest with the crazy name I can never remember. The redesign for him looks good. I mean, the original pictures I've seen of the original production also looks good, but I like how they did him almost mummified, almost a skeleton. The final encounter with him at the end is far more epic than they probably could have done it in the original production, and looks really good in color and in black and white. It looks really good. I think I might actually prefer this one in color. Since if I'm watching the animation, I'm probably just going to watch the whole animation. I think, having watched it in black and white and animation, I think I actually prefer the animation. I don't mind Creative Liberties as much in stories that are either completely missing or mostly missing, where there's only like one episode that exists. I'm a little more forgiving. Now, if it's a story that like half of it exists, I get a little more picky. Like I thought I was going to be unhappy with some of the Underwater Menace stuff, but oddly enough, I'm not. Again, as I said, it wasn't very jarring. I actually think the animation for Bondable Snowman, for the most part, does very, very well. I found myself enjoying it a lot more than I thought I was, especially since from the trailer, the animation kind of looked like the Fury animation, kind of some of the same models. But I was pleasantly surprised how much I actually enjoyed the Abominable Snowman animation. So basically it boils down to what audience is the new stuff for? I don't know. I think they're trying to reach all the audiences. They're trying to compromise and please everybody. I don't think that works. I mean, they know a lot of us classic fans are probably going to buy it anyway, just because we're the suckers that we are, honestly. Although some people are wising up and not buying them. I mean, I've got the Toy Maker one coming because I'm fine with the animation, but if they animate the Space Pirates like that, it won't be on this shelf, I can tell you now. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that wraps it up. So I want to know what you think. Comment down below and let me know. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. Links to that are down in the description. Don't forget to check out Cody's video. It's a great watch. I also have links to my Amazon wishlist and links to my Amazon UK wishlist down there. Don't forget to click the subscribe button as well. I want to give a shout out to a couple of my top tier patrons, Colin Coney and Perkins. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. It is appreciated. And most importantly, thank you for watching.